Hello, this is Solomon Castillo from Madison High School for 20 Minutes with a Pro. Today we're interviewing a web application developer, Isaac Castillo. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. Well, anyway, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, about hobbies or any stuff like that?
I like to just kind of cook. I do a lot of cooking around the house, whether it's cooking inside the kitchen, grilling by the barbecue pit, or smoking meat. I do a pretty good mean brisket that I won a few awards for. So that's kind of like what I do in kind of my pastime. When I'm not doing that, I'm watching YouTube videos on how to cook. So, cooking's kind of one of my pastime. Gets my mind off work and, gets me away from the computer monitor and the screen. Some other things are kind of like a little bit of handiwork around the house, little side projects just to kind of keep me physical as opposed to sitting in front of the computer screen all day.
All right. And about the computer screen, so can you explain to us what it is exactly you do for your job?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm self-employed. I do, my business does web application development and programming. So we offer kind of a wide range of services from, your normal, hey, I just need a website up and running that doesn't need any functionality, to complicated web applications that do need to talk to other systems. So normally if I usually get called on two different occasions. One, if a website goes down, I tend to get called on how to fix it or to get it back up and running. Because believe it or not, websites do get hacked. And then two, if two technologies don't talk to each other, it's like, hey, I got a ticketing system, but I also got something where people can actually add events to. They don't talk. Is there a way to make them talk? And so I figure out a solution that will make those two things talk. So that way, if you're adding an event, it actually adds tickets that can be sold and things like that. And that's just kind of one use case for it.
All right. Does that happen often with websites going down or even getting hacked?
Yeah, that happens quite often. I consider myself what I call a full stack developer. Full stack is another explanation in itself. In full stack development, there's what we call open source code. And open source code means it's a base code that a community contributes to, and they add code to it, but it's open, so it's free to use for the most part. And the fact that it's a code base that's exposed, hackers can sense, oh, there's a vulnerability here, and so they'll go in and they'll hack it. So one of the sites that I fixed had some not good drug prescriptions on their website. Their website was taken down. It was blacklisted by Google. So I had to go in and find where the hackers hacked, lock them out, make sure that things were secure, get the website back up and running, and things were running pretty smooth for a moment. And then I went to go check the website on my phone, and though they were running pretty smooth on a browser and a website, within a computer, the phone had a hack to it. The phone part of the website had a hack to it, to where it was sending you to casino websites for gambling. So I had to remove that as well. And as soon as I removed that, we tried to get it back listed with Google. The host company was able to verify and get the site back up and running. But it was probably down for about 24 hours, and I was called on a Friday for weekend hours to kind of get the site back up and running. So it does happen often. That's just one case. I think the other case, I had a site getting hacked, and they were a little bit nice. They actually just put a picture of a kitty cat, a kitten on the website. And with the kitten on the website, then they put, you should probably secure this website, blah, blah, blah. hacked by, and it was his call name. That was another interesting one. And I think like the third case that people use websites for is not the website itself, but the server. So it's like, hey, you have a website, it sits on a computer that's hosted somewhere, in the cloud. And so it's hosted somewhere. And because I don't want to use my own computer, I want to use your computer, I'm going to hack it, put a list of hundreds of thousands of emails on your server, and I'm going to use your server to send out emails. So that way, if it gets blacklisted, it doesn't blacklist me, it blacklists your server, and then you get in trouble, with emails. Yeah, so those are just kind of the different types of hacks. I mean, there's several others, but a lot of others, but those are the ones that I've messed with.
Is it hard to fix some of those problems with the hackers and everything?
About the hardest part to fix is that once, like for the email one, once an email provider gets an email from you and they know it's spam and they blacklist your server, you have to go through quite a bit of red tape to in submitting your case to them, saying, hey, my site got hacked and now it's fixed, so that way they can unblacklist your server, and that way your emails can get through to, let's say it was Gmail. If I'm sending a Gmail and Gmail says, hey, this server is sending a bunch of spam to a bunch of Gmails, lock them out. And they lock you out. Now I have to go to Gmail as a fix, say, hey, we fixed that vulnerability. This was an accident. The site was hacked. Can you unlist them? And so that part is the part that takes a while, because there's, it's like me asking you, hey, go find Gmail's support for their email. Well, where do you find that? Obviously, you try to Google it, but it's not easy to find sometimes. In the same case with the sites that were blacklisted through search engines, you have to resubmit those sites, and that takes time, because it's not like you could contact somebody down at Google and say, hey, we're good, can you turn it back on? No, you got to wait for their system to kind of pick up and go through that process again. So it's a bit of a mess when a site gets hacked.
And how long have you been a programmer?
Oh, ever since I was a little kid. No, I'm just kidding. So I wrote my first line. Oh, interesting enough, I was going to school for electrical engineering. And I didn't do well in the computer programming classes, and I think that's just because I didn't apply myself. And I remember the guy to the right of me writing a line of code, and it was basic HTML. And this was in 1998. And he was writing basic HTML, and he changed the color of the screen from white to red. And I was like, whoa. So then I started changing the color of the screen, from white to red, and then I never touched it again. And then fast forward to about maybe 2004, I started getting into graphic design and print work. So around that was about 98, graphic design and print work. And then around 2004, that's when somebody asked, well, you do business cards, you do posters, that kind of stuff. Do you do websites? And I said, well, I can try it. So I just kind of pushed myself to do a website for a client, and of course charged them for it, and it was a very low fee. But that was my kind of first taste of it in 2004. And then I had a buddy of mine that I worked with at an engineering firm that he wanted to learn PHP was the language, and I wanted to learn PHP as well. So we picked up a book at Barnes & Noble because there wasn't much Googling or resources around then. And then we got together twice a week and went through the book chapter by chapter. And then I kind of came up with the idea of, hey, let's build a system to run websites. And that was back in 2005. And, he mentioned something kind of funny like, we can't do that. And I was like, well, let me try. And so I started messing around with stuff. And then I showed him, I said, hey, look, I think we could do this. And, I kind of created our first kind of what we call a content management system. And there's probably about 2 to 3 websites since back in 2005 still use that system right now. So, speaks words for the system. It was pretty well put together. When I probably look back at the code right now, it'd probably make me just a little embarrassed, probably because it was back in the day of writing code, and it was probably unorganized and not well put together. But I mean, the systems are still running today. One of them runs an online store that pulls in quite a bit of money per month still, and it's on a system that I built back in 2005.
All right. You said something about languages. There's multiple languages in programming, correct?
Yes. Oh, there's a ton. Lots of languages. Yes.
How many do you know?
I know, if I would consider some I would say, though, that's not a language or anything like that. But I would say there's like 2 base languages that I write in. However, there's probably like four that I do total. I mean, I wouldn't consider HTML and CSS. I mean, I guess they are languages, but those are the base, for any website. But I do quite a bit of JavaScript and quite a bit of PHP. And then earlier I did explain that, I consider myself a full stack developer. And one of the things that you'll know about code is it's just code stacked upon code, stacked upon code. So, you start at the base level, everybody's talking about zeros and ones. I mean, that's still true. And then there's a frame on top of that, or system on top of that, that talks to that lower level. And then there's a system on top of that, and system on top of that, and system on top of that, by the time you get to where, okay, now there's PHP, which then talks to this, which then converts to this, which then converts to this. And that's why they call it a stack, because it's just stuff stacked upon each other, to help things easier. So PHP is probably one of the base languages that I know quite a bit. And then you have what you call frameworks. And frameworks are collections of code that are put together on a language. So, there's a Laravel framework that I mess with quite a bit, and it's built on PHP. And then there's a JavaScript framework called React and Vue.js, and those are built on JS. So I know quite a bit of frameworks that are built on some of the same languages that I develop in every day.
All right. Are those languages hard to learn when you first started out?
Some of them are hard, they are challenging. I mean, there's a lot of logic to it. I think my math background kind of helped me with some of that. I will say that, if you're going to learn a language, JavaScript would probably be the first one that I would suggest. And one of the funnest things, and you can ask any programmer, when you're learning a new language, the first thing you spit out either to a browser or to an output is the words "Hello World." So anytime you pick up a book and it's talking about, hey, here's JavaScript, the first thing it's going to say is, let's spit out "Hello World." And then with PHP, how do you do this? It's spit out "Hello World." And with Python, which is another language, hey, let's spit out "Hello World." And it's like, usually whenever you pick up your first line of code and whenever you're learning a new language, the first line is usually "Hello World." So it's kind of a thing in the programming community where you spit out "Hello World."
All right. Did you go through any type of schooling to get to where you are now?
Good question. So, yes and no. Yes, I went to school. No, it's not what I'm doing now. So, when I started school, I started off doing electrical engineering, and hit up a bunch of calculus classes. And that's where my strong math background comes from. And it was around that time that, I was working full time, married young, had a kid on the way. And it was hard to kind of do all three, go to school full time, work full time, provide. At that time, I worked at an engineering firm. And at that engineering firm, we, I did electrical drafting, and I was kind of in my field that when I graduated as an electrical engineer, I already had a job placement, or I already had, experience. And I just was not really jiving with, I didn't really like the atmosphere whenever I was looking through it. I it was not where I wanted to be. And during that time, I was kind of doing some freelance work, which I mentioned earlier, which was like print and graphic design. I was kind of doing that on my own, and I learned it on my own. So I ended up switching majors about 3 years into it to art. So I'm actually an art major. So nowhere in school did I pick up any line of code or that somebody showed me, hey, this is how you program. I picked up a book. I learned by myself. So, I'm a self-made, self-taught programmer by books, by experiences, by work, by doing stuff in the field, by reaching out to people who are already in the field and asking them how they do stuff and really just trying to soak it up. And I think it's probably better that way, that you learn any field really, is that you're self-taught, because then you have that drive to say, hey, I don't have to wait for school to learn this. I learned this on my own. And then now that it's time to pick up something new or add on to this already skill set that I've built, I know how to do it because I already know how to self-teach myself, if that makes sense. So, I think in any field that you go into, no matter what it is, you should always have that that want to learn. And not only that want to learn, but the know how to learn. Meaning that, hey, once you're at the top, make yourself at the bottom because there's another top. And you should always strive and push yourself, to reach the new top. And you should be like a sponge, Though I have a lot of years programming and though I can do circles now, I try to make myself a beginner, if you will, because it's like, well, what else can I learn? What else can I do? And it's very important for me to kind of cut that time out in my week to learn something new, to figure out something else, to make sure that I'm the best at my craft and field, because, I'm going to charge for it. And I better make sure it's on top of the line.
All right. Okay. And I'm guessing you have, or you work with a lot of other people. You have a bunch of other people working with you, either other programmers or graphic designers, or maybe even some photographers. What characteristics do you look for in those coworkers or partners?
I look for drive. So I do have contractors who I contract for work. I have several developers and I have several graphic designers that kind of help me, and then some kind of techie people. And I look for drive more than anything. The drive to, hey, they show up to work, and all my workers are virtual. We're all virtual. We were virtual before COVID. So, this really hasn't changed that much on how I work, other than being at a coffee shop every now and then. But they, a drive to kind of come into work to try and solve the same problems. A lot of what my characteristics are of, if we solve something and fix something, but it's something still not right, that we just got to make it right and we got to make it happen. I don't think I look as much as, hey, you got to show up to work at 8 or 9. There's nothing like that. More so that, hey, we got to get stuff done. And we got to make sure it's done. So more like a can-do attitude and a, being able, like I said before, being able to problem solve. Usually, majority of the guys are self-sufficient. They can kind of run on their own, and I give them a little bit of direction and they finish it, and I let them kind of interact with the clients as well. And when they interact with the clients as well, they get feedback from the clients, and then they go back and do some of their changes. And so I think that's kind of what I look for in somebody who's communicates well, who's honest. One of the things that I push quite a bit is honesty. Everybody makes mistakes, and code is one of those things. In programming, there's always bugs. I mean, if there wasn't, then nobody would need to work at Facebook anymore, or nobody would need to work at Google anymore. But the fact that there's bugs means there's still people who need to work on code. And so because of that, a lot of times I make sure that I say this to my clients, and I make sure that my people say to me is, if I messed up, I'm going to tell you I messed up, because that's just who I am. And that's just who I feel like I look for people who do that. It's like, hey, the reason this doesn't work this way, excuse me, is because of a database flaw that something happened and that I created. And I'm like, well, we learned from that, and let's get it done and get it fixed.